Okay, so in my last episode, if you want to call this, of creating a video game review site or web app, I talked about hashing passwords, and we went ahead and we did a little hashing ourselves, and then we also created the users table in our SQLite database. And silly me, after creating that video and recording and all that, I forgot to hit write changes, and I shut off my computer and it didn't. So hopefully my users table is actually just like yours. Um, and everything is still the same as it was last time. But today we're going to go ahead and continue on that. So if you have yet to watch this hashing passwords in Python part 1, this is going to be part 2 where we have the actual form and we create users and put them into our database. So let's go ahead and get started. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new file into our templates here. And it's going to be called login.html. Actually, no, it's not going to be called login because we're not going to be logging in people in this view. We're actually going to be creating users. So create user. I'm not sure if this is the proper way to name HTML files, but I'm going to name it like that with a capital C and a capital U. And .html. Right. So now we have this, and I'm just going to type HTML and then click on this one so it brings up this scaffolding of code that we don't need to write anymore. And then for the title, I'm going to put create a new account or something like that. Right? And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, excuse me, I'm going to use Bootstrap to use for our CSS. I guess I can just use this copy button. If you haven't seen in a few of my other videos where we use Bootstrap, Bootstrap is just predefined CSS, so it makes our lives a little bit easier than, writing all the CSS ourselves. Someone already made it and did it better than what we can, so why not use it, is my motto. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to, in the body, create some kind of div. And the class is a class from Bootstrap, and it's going to be called container. And I think we used this in another video where I had a div, and that was a class container, and we made a form that talked with the backend. Okay, so now I'm just going to make a form tag, and the action is just going to be this page. So create user.html. And then the method is going to be post because we're posting this information to create the user account, right? And then inside of this, we're going to ask for a username, a name, and I think a password, right? That's all we really need. Yeah, and it'll create the ID on its own. So let's go ahead and create divs for each one of those. So the first one will be for probably the name is what we'll go ahead and ask for first. And this is going to be called form group for its CSS class from Bootstrap. And then let's just have a label, and we'll name this name is what it's for, and your name. Okay. And then below that, we'll have some kind of input. It'll be text, and its class is form control. And we need to give it a name for the backend, and I'm just going to name it name. So when we go into the backend, after the user hits submit, we can grab this item by denoting the name of the item which we named name. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this actually, because we need this again, and this one is going to be username instead, and your username, and then we'll also make its name username. I'm going to exit these. Thank you. Okay. And then I think lastly, we just need to ask them to enter a password. So I'm going to paste that again. Whoops. I thought I had the right thing in my clipboard. I did not. Let's go ahead and place that. This one's going to be password. And then we're going to name this password. And instead of text, I'm actually going to make this password. And in the form, all that's going to do, instead of you being able to see, it's just going to be those dots. Like when you enter a password, instead of showing you actually what you're typing, the characters, it'll show you dots in case anyone is looking over your shoulder. And then lastly, I'm going to put a button, and it's going to say something like submit. And the class is going to be button and then space button primary. And it'll make it that nice blue color. Okay. And then the type of button is a submit button. Cool. So let's go ahead and just see how this looks. First thing we need to do, why does it do this? CD into Python. And now we can Python, what was I going to do? API demo. And the thing is, we can't actually get to this form because we haven't actually done anything in the backend. So what I want to do is I'm going to create a new route. If the user types in the URL /create user, we're going to send them to that form, that HTML page. Okay, so we can do app.route, and its path is going to be like create user, and methods is going to be equal to get and post. Put them both in there. And then def create user. Okay, and let's just return render template and then create user.html. Okay, I think that'll work. Let's go ahead and run this. And create user. Cool. We need to change this to password. So let's go back and let's change this to your password. All right, let's make it say something like, please enter a password. Please enter a username and then your name. Now let's make it sound a little more formal. Please enter your name, not a name. Okay, so I saved that. Let's see if we refresh this. It does look better. Okay, so I'm going to do a little CSS. I'm going to make this look a little more pleasant. And I did this on my laptop when I was testing this out. So that's where I'm getting it so quickly. And if you like the style of this, you can do it as well. Or if you want to change it up a bit, obviously feel free to do so. In the body, I'm just going to add a background color. And it's going to be a hex value. So it's going to be a dash, or a, what's that called? Like a pound? 708090. And what's cool about VS Code is it actually shows you what that color is equal to. So it equals this nice little gray. Okay. And then the style of the div, I'm going to change up a bit as well. We're going to make the margin top something like 80 pixels. And the reason for that is, now if we refresh, it's a little bit farther down than it was before, as you can see. Before it was way up here at the top, all right? So we're going to push it down a little bit. And then the form itself, we're actually going to style as well. Now, if you wanted to, you can make these in CSS classes in its own CSS file, which we might end up doing in the future just to clean it up a bit. But for right now, I'm just going to do it this way. So margin left is going to be auto, and then margin right is also going to be auto. And then we can change the width actually as well. And I'm going to make that about 350 pixels just because I was playing around with it and it looked the best to me at the time. And then we're also going to change its background color to hex F8F8FF. And I didn't make that an 8, did I? I held in the shift. There we go. And I think we have one more thing. What we're going to do is we're going to give it some padding. Three emphasis. Okay. So let's see what that looks like now. Cool. One thing I wanted to do I thought I did it on my laptop, but I must not have. I'm going to make the corners of this form a bit rounded because I think that looks better. So what you can actually do is you can do, I think it's called corner, what is it, radius, border radius. Is that what it was? Oh, we don't even need to do this. Okay. So I was going to hard code it, and I forgot what it's called, but luckily for us, there's actually a class, and I'm going to put it right before the style. There's a class in Bootstrap called rounded that we can add, and it'll make its corners then rounded like this. See how it's a little bit rounded at the top? If we zoom in, you might be able to see it better. I think that just looks cleaner, and now I think this form actually looks really nice. If we wanted to, we can make it a little bit bigger, make the fonts bigger and all that. But I think right now with the background and the color of this, I really like this. I think this looks clean, and now I think it looks like a decent form. Okay, so now what we have to do now is go back to our Python code. And before we want to render that, let's go ahead and ask ourselves if the request method is post. And if it's post, it's equal to post. And if it's post, that means that they submitted the form. Okay, so I'm going to make variables for each one of these for the username, for the password, and for the name. So let me go ahead and do that. Request.form, and that's username. And then, let's see, password is going to be request.form password. And then we can also do name is equal to request.form, and we name that one name. All right. What I want to do is I want to do a little validation. Now I could, and I should, in theory, validate that each one of these is filled out. But actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-add a required field to these. So they cannot submit unless that is required. So I can add this required into the input for each one and say that is required. And let me go ahead, add that, save. Let's go look at the form. And you can see if I do this, and let's say I leave out password and I go to submit, it'll notice that it says please fill out this field. And it does that because of the required. And it'll go to the first one until it finds that it hasn't been entered anything, and then it gives this little notice, and then the submit does not work. So that's a little bit easier than you doing it in the code and then prompting something on the screen saying, hey, you left out this value. So we have our values here, and now we just want to make a connection to our database. So we can do SQLite3.connect. And this is going to be the path of our SQLite database. So for me, I'm just going to go into my File Explorer on my other screen here. I'm going to copy the path once I get to it, and I'm going to put R and then paste it in. And the R denotes that we have these backslashes. And it says, please disregard these backslashes. Okay, so we have our connection. Let's go ahead and make a cursor. So cursor equals con.cursor. And our cursor allows us to execute SQL. So now we can write our SQL. We can say insert, and I would spell it right, insert into users. And we can have, let's say name, username, password, values, question mark, question mark, question mark. And the reason I'm using question marks is because I am going to use parameters to enter them into the SQL statement. If you don't know what parameters are in a SQL statement, I did a video a few videos back talking about this exactly. And the last thing I think we should do before our connection is create a hashed password variable. So this is where we use the code that we wrote in the last video. where we did our little demo. Let's put this at the top, this passlib. Okay. And let's just copy this right here. Where did I go? Right there. And hash password is going to be equal to the SHA-256 crypt.hash of the password. And that's what we're going to pass into the database. So now if we do cursor.execute, the first one is our SQL, and the second one is going to be a tuple of the values that are going to replace these question marks. So the first one is going to be name, second one is going to be username, and the third one is going to be hashed password. And then don't forget, we actually need to do con.commit, or it won't save it to the database. And I think that should do it if I am not wrong. So let's go ahead and let's see if we create an account, if it actually does anything. Okay, so the username is going to be like coding21. Our password is just going to be password. Let's go ahead and submit that. And there we go. The requested URL. Please check your spelling and try again. Let's see if it says anything. Oh, that's why. We don't need the HTML. So let's go back to our action. This is just going to be create user. There we go. Coding21 and password. Submit. You can see that nothing happened. But if we go ahead and look at our database, you can now see that it now saved. And our password is now hashed. So in the next episode, I'm actually thinking about maybe adding another feature to this real quick. And then we can do a login page as well, where it'll check the password that we give it, it'll hash it, compare it with the hashed value in our database for this user. And then, if it's correct, it'll let them in. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you followed along and made a nice little login page with me. And I hope you guys are enjoying the series. I'm enjoying making it, that's for sure. And I will see you guys in the next video.